Welcome back to another episode of the Zoned In Podcast, your favorite MMA podcast to use as background noise while you do school, life, work, whatever it is. And on today's episode, well, we got a few things to talk about. You know, the UFC Fight Night card was actually pretty interesting that we just had here. And so we'll start off with the main event. Arman Tsarukyan dominates Dan Hooker. Let's just call a spade a spade. This fight was not very competitive. I didn't expect it to be very competitive. Now, there was the whole controversy about the headbutting thing, and I do want to talk about the fouling and stuff a little bit that's been going on in the sport, because it is a big issue, right? We do need to address it, because if we leave it unaddressed, then fighters are just going to keep getting away with it. So, of course, that headbutt that, I think it not opened up, but it formed like a hematoma on Dan Hooker's head. His eye was like nearly shut. I didn't notice the headbutt initially when I watched the fight. I saw it after the fact, and I gotta be honest, like, the problem is, when you're talking about fouls in the sport of MMA, I don't think the intention really matters, because you're doing the damage to the opponent, right? If I punch you in the back of the head and I knock you unconscious, it doesn't matter if it was intentional or not. That damage to your brain is done, right? Your chin will get worse because of taking that blow to the head. It doesn't matter the intentional behind it or not. And referees really need to start doling out more points. And I knew that when Herb Dean was talking about that meeting that they were going to have, saying, oh, we're going to start, being more punishing towards fighters or whatever for eye pokes. Yeah, that was a load of crap. We all knew it was going to be a load of crap, though, because, when have referees historically ever started to take charge? And the way I look at it is, if you're a fighter, you should be poking eyes. You should be throwing low blows. You should be headbutting. Because if the referees aren't going to take away points, why not? Why not do it? Why not poke people in the eyes? Of course, logically, I don't actually think that you should be poking each other in the eyes. But if the referee's not going to do anything, if he's just going to give you warnings, do it. If it's going to help you win your fight and you get your win bonus because of it, go for it. The referees aren't going to stop you, so, what stops you from doing it besides that, right? The referees need to start taking more points. We need to see money reduced, which I believe Jim Miller suggested, purse reduction of some sort. I 100% agree with that. We need more disqualifications. We need to bring in the yellow and red card system for Pride. That would solve a lot of issues as well, I think. But this whole thing, I don't know, there's another topic that kind of comes into judges scoring fights as well, when you're talking about deducting points and stuff. What I think is we should do something similar to what One Championship does, and you don't score the fight round by round, you score it as a whole. Now, the whole judging system for that could be a little bit tricky and subjective. It would take time to get used to, but I think that that's something that would do better, because the 10-point must system is boxing's system, right? That is literally boxing's thing, and I don't think that we should be incorporating a boxing system into MMA, because it's a completely different thing. When you incorporate things like grappling into play, kicks, elbows, knees, stuff that isn't in boxing, then you kind of start to make it a little bit more complicated on how you score a 10-point round. If we're going to be doing the 10-point system, I think that we should be using all the points involved. I think we should be able to get as low as 10-4 even, or stuff like that, or have an 8-4 round. Maybe you should get all 10 points if you completely dominate the striking and the grappling, and maybe you should get 8 points if you just dominate just the grappling, for instance, and plus a submission attempt. Or there should be a clear criteria as to how you score fights in a way where there's not going to be any controversy behind it, and we're not going to be screaming robbery after every single fight night card, because it is getting a bit atrocious. But back to the Tsarukyan Hooker fight, I honestly think that Arman would have won regardless. It wouldn't have mattered. And who does Dan Hooker think he is, bro? Going for those guillotines? Don't be silly, jump the gilly. I know that Dustin Poirier has said that a million times, but he shouldn't have been doing that. When Dan Hooker was trying to defend the takedowns, he defended them. It's when he went for the guillotines, that's when he got taken down. Dan Hooker is not an elite level grappler. I don't know if he thought he was going to catch Arman Tsarukyan, but Arman went to the ground with Charles Oliveira and got put in a mounted guillotine. You really think that he's going to be scared of Dan Hooker's guillotines? Absolutely not. Not at all. So, yeah, Dan Hooker, I don't know what that fight IQ was. He was getting outstruck on the feet too, but at least there, it's Dan Hooker's realm. He's got more power than Arman, probably. I don't know if he's got more power, but he's definitely got a better chin. The power-to-chin ratio is definitely on Dan Hooker's side. I just think that Dan Hooker's only chance of winning this fight was on the feet, and for some reason he's let's take it to the ground. Bro plays by his own rules, I guess, but Arman wins by way of arm triangles. It was pretty easy. There wasn't a whole lot of resistance. And Arman's next in line for a title shot, right? He has to be. I understand there's the whole thing about him pulling out versus Islam, but he's had a fight now. He beat Dan Hooker because no one else wanted to fight him, so now he's got to go back to the basics, I guess. And also, he's got to be fighting Ilia next. There's no excuse for Ilia not to be fighting him, especially because his brother just got done his fight and he won. So now Ilia could focus on his own training camp, which I don't know when he's going to be fighting next, but hopefully he's going to be around February-ish. And yeah, I think that we should run the Arman fight. I think that's what needs to happen. And moving on to the Belal Muhammad and Ian Garry fight, it was a good performance from Ian Garry, but I feel like people are overlooking Belal's performance a little bit, because like when I watched this fight, I didn't think it was like super egregiously one-sided. I thought Belal was getting some of his too. The only difference is that Ian Garry was doing a good job with the leg kicks and the knee stomps, keeping Belal at range. His takedown defense held up really well, but we cannot make the mistake again of thinking that just because Ian Garry was defending Belal Muhammad's takedowns, that therefore he will do the same thing against Islam Makhachev, because we saw when JDM fought Islam that when you compare Belal to Islam, it's just not the same ballpark at all. Like, Islam's out here hitting a grand slam, whereas Belal's popping out. Right, he's lining out to first base. Like he's not near the level of Islam Makhachev. We've seen that. And now that we understand, okay, so Ian Garry was able to defend Belal's takedowns, right? But there were moments where Belal was able to get in deep on the shots with the double legs. He was able to get his hands clasped, and he still wasn't able to get the takedowns. But if that's Islam clasping his hands like that, he's taking you down. You are going for a ride. So I'm very concerned about Ian Garry going into this fight, especially because the style that Ian Garry possesses, with a lot of footwork, a lot of lateral movement, good leg kicks, pretty decent distance management, but Belal was able to tag him at times, and Islam's also a much better striker than Belal Muhammad is, so I think that if Belal's tagging him, then I think that Islam will absolutely be able to tag him. The only thing that would go in Ian Garry's favor is the fact that he's an orthodox fighter, right? When Islam fought JDM and JDM went southpaw, Islam immediately debilitated his calf with those calf kicks. And he won't be able to do the same thing against Ian Garry because, A, Ian Garry does a really good job at checking leg kicks, but also because they're in opposite stances, it's harder to land that calf kick really cleanly. And Ian Garry's going to try to pot shot at a distance, land jabs and leg kicks for 5 rounds, and really try to avoid the takedowns at all costs. But I don't see it happening. I think Islam's going to be too fast. I think he's going to be able to close the distance extremely efficiently. And I see him taking him down and controlling Ian Garry over the course of 5 rounds and winning a decision. But Ian Garry is a good grappler. In my eyes, he's a better grappler than JDM. So, like, maybe there will be opportunities to where he can actually get back up to the feet and land some strikes. Who knows? I think Ian Garry's chances are better than JDM's, but I've said this for a long time. I think the style to beat Islam Makhachev is a forward pressure boxing style who could check the leg kicks, right? And I've said for a while, though, that I think that Ilia Topuria has the best chance of beating Islam, because you need to have good knockout power. You need to have very crisp boxing, because you don't want to be too much of a kicker, because those kicks can be caught and be taken down to the ground. And I think that Ilia going up against a southpaw like that is going to make it easier for him to not have to only not worry about the leg kicks also. So I could see a scenario where Ilia is able to get inside the pocket and trade with Islam, because Islam really doesn't like fighting in the pocket. The problem is that Islam can easily duck underneath the shots and go for a takedown. And I know it's so easy for us to say, well, why doesn't Ilia just throw a knee or throw an uppercut? But I don't think you guys understand just how hard it is to land that shot, especially because Islam is so quick to shoot at your legs. Like, Ilia's not going to have that kind of time. And if this fight's at 170 pounds, I think that Islam's just going to overpower Ilia Topuria and kind of bully him. But if they were like the exact same size, I would 100% be favoring Ilia Topuria. Just because of the fact that I think he's a very good grappler. He showed very good takedown defense against Charles Oliveira. Now, Oliveira is not the takedown artist that Islam Makhachev is, but Ilia was able to reverse the position, take down Charles, get into side control, get him in a crucifix momentarily, and then when Charles went for a leg lock, Ilia immediately was able to get out of that and stand up and knock him out on the feet. And I've always been very suspect on Islam's durability. Maybe not so much now at 170 pounds. I think his chin is going to be a little bit better. I think the cut to 155 is leaving his chin much more compromised. So you could argue that it's an issue of weight cutting, not necessarily durability. But I just think if Alexander Volkanovski is dropping you with one shot, then I just don't like the odds when you fight Ilia. Like, you got to be perfect for 25 minutes to fight Ilia Topuria. So I do favor stylistically Ilia to win that fight, but it depends on the weight class that it's fought at. If it's at 155, I'm favoring Ilia. If it's at 170, I'm favoring Islam. If it's a catchweight fight in the middle, I'd probably slightly lean to Islam Makhachev's side, but Ilia's got the best chance, in my opinion, of winning. Because the thing is with Ian Garry, he just doesn't have the sort of power to keep Islam off him, right? He's got really good footwork, he's got good jabs, he's got good leg kicks from a distance. I could see how Ian Garry could cause problems for Islam, right? Could have prolonged periods of time on the feet just because of Ian Garry's footwork and ability to cut off angles and such. He's going to be throwing lots of head kicks at Islam to keep him at bay, lots of jabs, lots of knee stomps. He's going to be throwing lots of stuff up the middle probably as well to deter Islam from shooting takedowns on him, but ultimately, I just don't think it's going to matter very much. I just don't think Ian Garry's got the power to keep Islam off him. I think Islam's going to take him down, and he's probably going to win a decision. That's what I think. But you guys can let me know what you think about that one down in the comments below. But overall, this was a very good card. So next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, this upcoming Saturday, there are no fights this weekend. So you guys have been given the night off to do whatever you want. I know, it's crazy. I do like having weekends where there aren't fights sometimes, because like a lot of times when you have weekends without fights, you're just able to kind of cut back a little bit. And I feel like as an MMA fan sometimes, I don't know if you guys ever feel this way, like I love watching fights. Okay, let's not get this mistaken. I don't hate watching fights or anything. But what I don't like is having to watch every single weekend, especially when you get those Apex cards with complete crap fights that nobody cares about. Like, we don't want to watch that. I'd rather just have the night off, to be honest. And I understand I don't have to watch every single fight card, but as someone who runs an MMA channel, I think it's necessary to watch as many fight cards as I possibly can to give you guys the best informed information on fights and such. But also, so we skip this upcoming weekend. So the next weekend is the next card. It's going to be UFC 323, the final pay-per-view of the year, with Merab and Petr Yan running that rematch back. So this should be interesting. So Merab is 34. I didn't actually realize that he was starting to get a little bit up there. At least for a bantamweight, that's up there. Petr Yan, I just got to be honest, guys, the styles is just too difficult. Like, I think Petr Yan has the skill to beat Merab. That's why everyone favored him to win the first fight, because he's got the better skill. But Merab was able to shut down Petr Yan's game by just never letting him get out of first gear and constantly shooting takedowns, just throwing the kitchen sink at him constantly. Petr Yan's going to have to get started much faster in this fight, and he's going to have to get going over the course of 5 rounds very quickly in order to beat someone like Merab. Lots of stuff off the middle, front kicks, uppercuts, knees, all that sort of stuff. Petr Yan's shown the ability to throw those things before, so there is a possibility for him to get the knockout, but it's going to be difficult to deter Merab. So I'm going to go with Merab by way of decision on this one, but if Petr Yan wins, it's going to be by way of knockout. Then we have a title fight that's kind of getting slept on a little bit in my eyes, which is Alexander Pantoja taking on Joshua Van for the flyweight belt. Joshua Van's 24 years old. That is crazy. So Pantoja's getting up there in age. He's 35. So a lot of people are writing Joshua Van off on this one, and I can see why. The only thing is we don't know where Joshua Van's takedown defense is really at, because like people don't really shoot takedowns on him. I think he has been taken down in the UFC before, but in his recent fights, people just don't really shoot on him. And if anyone has shot on him, then it's not really anybody of note. Like, he hasn't fought anyone on the level of Pantoja. But no matter what happens, I think that this is going to be a good learning and growing experience for Joshua Van. I think he's going to get better from this fight, win or lose. And he does have a style to give someone like Pantoja problems. He's definitely the better boxer, but he's got to be careful with keeping his head on center line, because Pantoja does hit extremely hard. He was able to get away with it against Brandon Royval because Royval doesn't hit very hard. He's a big volume striker for the most part, but he doesn't hit extremely hard or anything. And I think that Pantoja, not only does he have extreme power in his hands, he's also got elite level durability. Like, Joshua Van's probably going to lay hands on him in this fight, and Pantoja's probably going to take some shots, but he's not going to be deterred from Joshua Van, especially because Van doesn't really have one-punch knockout power. He's kind of more of an accumulation fighter. He's got more pop in his shots than someone like Brandon Royval does, but he doesn't have one-punch knockout power necessarily. He doesn't have as much as Pantoja. And I think if this fight hits the ground, it's game over. Like, Joshua Van, only being 24 years old, this is going to be a great learning experience for him, but I just don't see him winning this fight, to be honest. But I don't want to write him off completely, so, you know, why don't we wait till fight night before we jump to conclusions? But I think Pantoja will win by second round submission, most likely. Right, and then I didn't even realize on this card is you got the Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno fight. Probably a number one contender fight, right? The problem is Brandon Moreno these days has gone extremely under the radar, right? Ever since he lost to Pantoja, where that fight was very competitive, right? Like, it wasn't like a one-sided beating, but Moreno just wasn't quite able to get the win there, right? And then he lost to Brandon Royval, which was about 9 months later, I believe. And he kind of just got outpaced. Like, Brandon Moreno just wasn't really out there throwing very much in that fight. He kind of seemed off. But ever since, he's come back into form when he fought Amir Albazi, where he put on an absolute masterclass over Albazi over the course of 5 rounds. And then he beat Steve Ercik over the course of 5 rounds in a fight that was relatively competitive, but Moreno was just getting the better of those shots. So now he's going to be fighting Tatsuro Taira, who Taira's mostly a grappler, right? Like, he has good power in his hands. He is pretty explosive. But, like, for the most part, like, he is more of a grappler, but with developing striking. And he's only 25 years old. Like, this flyweight division seems extremely young and up-and-coming. And I've said this for a while now, that I think that Taira's got the best chance of beating someone like a Pantoja, mostly due to the grappling. But he was getting taken down by Brennan Royval. That is not a good sign going to a fight with Pantoja. But that was a year ago, and Tyra's only getting better. He was very young back then, so, I don't want to write him off too much necessarily. Tyra's a really good grappler, so we could potentially see a scenario where he could be the next generation version of Pantoja. But we gotta wait to see if he gets through Brandon Moreno. If he beats Brandon Moreno, then yes, he's absolutely next in line for a title shot. The thing is, if Brandon Moreno wins, do you give him a third crack at Pantoja? Like, I don't know, to be honest with you. That's kind of a tricky one, because we saw that entire fiasco with Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway, and it's like, the third fight didn't prove to be more competitive. Moving on to Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. And this is an interesting fight. I mean, Henry Cejudo's 38 years old. He's coming off that TKO loss to Song Yadong after the whole eye poke thing, where, I mean, Song Yadong was getting the better of Henry Cejudo, but it wasn't like completely an uncompetitive fight or anything like that. So, I don't know. That's going to be interesting. We're going to see where Peyton Talbot's takedown defense is really at. But I am favoring Talbot on this one just because I think Henry Cejudo is just kind of getting old, to be honest with you. He has the capabilities to fight. He's got good fight IQ, but I think his age is going to prevent a lot in this one, if I'm going to be honest with you. But enough yap. Why don't we just get into some of these questions? So if you guys want to submit your hot takes or your questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I will hopefully be able to get to them. So, starting with the question of, how do you think Alexander Volkanovski versus Merab Dvalishvili would go? I think Volkanovski wins. I don't understand this narrative where people say that they think that Merab would win. What, you think he's going to hold Volkanovski up against the cage? You think he's going to wear Volkanovski out? I don't think it's going to happen. I think Volkanovski's too big for Merab. I think it's too much of a size gap where I think Volkanovski's going to control the action at distance, land leg kicks, land jabs. He's going to land big right hands over the top on Merab. Like, Volkanovski's one of the best strikers, and Merab doesn't have the knockout power to threaten someone like Volk. The problem is with Volk's fights going forward is no matter what, there's always going to be that threat that he could get KO'd due to his chin just not being great. But against Merab, I wouldn't worry about that. I would think that Volkanovski's going to absolutely dominate Merab just due to the size. Next up, we got a hot take. I favor Arman to beat Ilia because of his superior ground game. I think Ilia is overrated on the ground because he hasn't been tested much. He did survive against Charles, and that's about it. Well, he did get side control on Charles. He did momentarily get a crucifix. And while Charles Oliveira did go for a leg lock, I mean, Ilia was able to escape that pretty easily and get back up to the feet. Like, it wasn't like Charles had him in a threatening submission or anything. It wasn't like he had him in a fully locked-in guillotine, guard locked and everything. No, it wasn't like that. And I think that Ilia is a very good grappler. He does have very good takedown defense. It'll be interesting, but I think that on the feet, Arman's got nothing for Ilia. Like, Ilia is going to box his head off. Like, I hope you guys understand this. And I think that Arman might shoot some takedowns. He might even get some, but we're going to see what Ilia's like on the ground. And I know people say he got taken down by Bryce Mitchell, but guys, that was like 2 or 3 years ago now. Like, we could let it go now. I think Ilia is definitely 100% improved since that fight. So why don't we relax here for a bit on this whole Ilia doesn't have great grappling talk. People could say it's overrated, sure, but you have no evidence to really support that theory other than it just hasn't been tested much in the UFC, but he is a good grappler. We've seen it. Hot take, I think at 145, Merab has a really good chance of beating Topuria. I don't think he does because I think Ilia's style just causes someone like Merab issues. Like, he's going to be on that front pressure. He's going to be boxing the head off Merab. And all he has to do is land one shot against Merab. Like, Merab's not a big 135-pounder. At 145, he gets slept by Ilia relatively easily. At least in my opinion. Question, what is your reaction to MMA Guru saying some racist remarks at Islam and his religion? So, I don't know the entire context surrounding what MMA Guru said. I know it had something to do with, like, he said something like, go cry to border and whatever it was he said. Like, I don't condone his behavior, and I know that he's kind of backtracked on that a little bit, that he kind of thinks that he realizes that he kind of went over the line with it. I think Guru says things a lot of times to garner reaction out of people, right? He is a rage baiter, and people fall for the rage bait. And honestly, if you want my opinion, I think if you don't like a specific YouTuber or what they say, I think you don't have to watch them. I think you could easily just ignore them and go on with your day. Like, if you try to cancel people or you comment your rage and you let them know how you feel about it or whatever, it's only going to fuel to the fire. It's only going to add more to it. And he's going to continue to make that content and be that edgy guy, right? That's what he's known for. He's known for being an edgy guy. And I think if you don't want him to grow as an MMA YouTuber, don't watch him. Just don't give him any attention, because if you don't give him attention, his whole act becomes kind of pointless and he's eventually going to stop, right? Now, I understand he's not going to lose his entire subscriber fan base, but he could potentially have a massive fall off if people just stop paying attention to him. And I'm not trying to, like, make Guru lose his fan base or anything like that, but, like, if you say stuff like that, people aren't going to react very good, right? People are not going to be very happy about it. So I think it's important to make sure that people understand that the only way to avoid conflicts like this is just to not watch him at all. Like, I don't watch Guru. Not because of whatever he says or whatever. I just don't like to watch a whole lot of MMA YouTubers for the most part, because I like my own ideas to be my own. I want to be original, and if I come up with something, I want it to be my own idea. I understand that I could run into the issue of potentially copying someone else by accident if I don't know what other people are posting, but it's the name of the game. You know, no idea is 100% original. Whatever idea you come up with has probably been done to some sort of extent before. Right. Opinion. Do more comedy like impersonating. I like the Dana one. Yeah, that one was kind of funny. I wanted to start doing more skits like that and stuff, but first of all, I'm terrible when it comes to, like, impersonating people's voices. But if you're talking about just, like, what they say, what people generally say, yeah, I really liked making that Dana one. It was really funny. I had one for Leon Edwards I was going to do as well, which, if you guys want to see that, let me know. It's not going to be impersonating his voice necessarily, but just how he is as a person, generally speaking. I do like doing the skits. They are kind of funny, but, you know, if you guys want to see more of that, you know, let me know down in the comments, and I could absolutely make more of those. Question, who do you think wins, Pantoja or Van? I have to favor Pantoja because even though we don't know where Joshua Van's takedown defense is 100% at, I can't favor what I don't know. Right? I can't favor Joshua Van just because I don't know what his takedown defense is going to look like in this fight. So I have to go with Pantoja on the basis that we've seen more of his skill, and we know he's more of an established, well-rounded fighter. So I have to go with Pantoja on this one. But if Joshua Van is going to win, it's going to be by way of knockout. Question, when would be the right time for Charles to retire? Ooh, that's a good question. I think Charles should retire if he fights like Max Holloway and loses. I don't think he should necessarily retire then, but I think if he loses 2 more fights, I think he should retire. I think that would be a good time for him, because, like, if he's still winning, there's no reason for him to stop fighting. But if he starts to go on, like, a big loss streak and stuff, I think he should retire after 2 more losses. I think that's perfect for him personally. Question, what would Islam have to do to be top 3 fighter of all time? He's just got to keep doing what he's doing. Like, you know, I know people think I hate Islam, but I have him at the number 4 spot. And the reason why I have him there is because, yes, he's a double champ and all that. That's all well and good. But number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, 16-fight win streak, which that stuff doesn't really mean too much to me, to be honest. Like, pound-for-pound number 1 is literally just a marketing tool in my eyes. And when you take a look at, like, 16-fight win streak, that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to me, because you could fight just 16 scrubs and get a 16-fight win streak. So it doesn't necessarily matter too much to me. It's the competition beaten that I care about. So for Islam Makhachev, for him to be top 3 all time, I think if he goes in there, puts on a dominant performance over Ian Garry, then we could have the discussion of top 3 all time. But the problem is with Islam, in my eyes, is there's just so many asterisks on his career. A lot of short notice replacement opponents, or opponents that were out of their prime. It's not Islam's fault. I'm not going to crap on him for it, but I also can't reward him points for that either, right? So I think Islam's just got to keep doing what he's doing, and eventually he will. Question, Ilia versus Benson Henderson in a prime. Who wins? I favor Ilia, but the thing about Benson Henderson is he's the type of fighter where no matter who you put up against him, he's always going to put up at least a somewhat competitive fight, just because he's such a well-rounded fighter. And I do think that Ilia wins. I think that, like, if you're getting dropped by punches from Anthony Pettis, yeah, Ilia's going to have a field day with you. But, like, I think Benson Henderson can make it competitive, use the calf kick, shoot in some takedowns, make it a well-rounded MMA fight. And, yeah, I could definitely see a scenario where Benson Henderson can make it more competitive than people would think, but I still think it's Ilia. And, guys, that's all the questions we have for today. If you have questions or hot takes you want to drop them down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace!